All right, so due to the nature of today's games right now, for instance, the Canucks are up 1-0 on the Detroit Red Wings. Uh, Fun game for the Canucks, even though they didn't show up at the start. I want to talk about some other stuff, and this is kind of what I'm talking about doing this week. Today it's the Capitals, and I know Capitals fans are probably thinking, why? Defending Stanley Cup champions, and over the last month approximately, not really looking like the Stanley Cup champions. Now, I want to preface this by saying this. Last year, at right around this time, too, I believe they were struggling. And there may not be a whole lot to it, but it still feels like it's worthy of looking at. They're 3-6-2 in their last 10. They're 5 points clear of Buffalo. So if they don't get out of this mess that they're in, they could very well find themselves on the outside looking. And if Buffalo picks it up again, December 31st is where this starts. They started Braden Holtby in a 6-3 loss versus Nashville. They had a 3-1 lead in that game, and then it just went away. January 3rd, they lost 5-2 at St. Louis. They had a 2-1 lead in that one. Again, it's Braden Holtby. So January 4th, back-to-back games, right? So you go with Copley. You lose 2-1 at Dallas, and that was a game that was kind of stolen by Hudobin. And so you move on from that, but you've lost 3 in a row at that stage. Now, they did turn it around after that. January 8th, so after a 4-day rest, they won 5-3 versus Philadelphia. Again, Phoenix Copley's in net. 2 days later, they go to Boston. You got to put in Holtby because Holtby owns the Bruins. So 4-2 is the result there at Boston. Everything's good, right? Then January 12th, they lose in overtime versus Columbus 2-1. Holtby ends up getting injured after saving 10 out of 11. Copley goes in. They don't say a whole lot about whatever happened with Holtby. That's fine, because that's standard now. Injury, it's a body injury. It's physical. January 14th, Copley starts as they lose 4-1 versus St. Louis. Notice, they had Holtby here and Copley here. So there may be, maybe Holtby's hurt. That's why he didn't play either of these back-to-backs. Or maybe they looked at how they did against St. Louis and Nashville before that and say, no, we're going to try the other guy. And then at Nashville, they get bombed 7-2 with Copley in net. So that's 13 goals they've allowed against Nashville in 2 games. They scored 5. Against St. Louis, they've allowed 9 and they scored 3. So a big part of this losing they've been doing is the record against the West. This is why I measure teams' records against their own conference and against the other conference. January 18th, of course, they lost at New York. So at the New York Islanders, 2-0. And then on the 20th at Chicago, they lost 8-5. Now, the one game I didn't have in here the first time I did this video. This is my 3rd try. January 6th, they beat Detroit 3-2. And maybe I didn't include that because it's Detroit. I'm not sure. But at any rate, I always, and I double-checked. I was like, crap, I got to redo this. So I had to take some numbers off the board, put some numbers on the board. Their win against Detroit on the 6th kind of felt like, okay, well, they didn't lose. And that was the start of a 3-game winning streak. And those 3 wins are sandwiched in between 8 losses. 2 in overtime, but 8 losses altogether. Now, the fact that they blow leads in those first 2 games, not great. They didn't end up having leads in the rest of these games, for the most part. It's been a slow drop. And the thing about it is that this 8-5 loss at Chicago today kind of feels like bottom. Now, over their next 10 games, they're at home against San Jose in 2 days. Then the day after that, they're at Toronto. So that's going to tell you a lot as they go into the break. Where are they? Are they this 3-6-2 team, or is it just a matter they can't play the West, or is it just fluke? Because the record against the East over this run, 3-1-1 versus the West, 0-5-1. Struggling against the West. February 1st, after the break, they're at home against Calgary, Boston, Vancouver, Colorado, Florida, LA. So that is a 6-game homestand. They play 7 of their next 8 at home. Then they go to Columbus and San Jose, and that's the end of those 10. Of course, after San Jose, they got Anaheim and LA. It's a California road trip. How they play against San Jose twice over the next 10 games could be huge for them. And the fact that San Jose's the next test is good. Probably good for San Jose, too, after that beating they took from the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is nothing new for teams in the league. But what's frustrating if you're a Washington fan is, while, yes, they've got a good home-heavy schedule coming up, there were some winnable games here they lost. Over those wins, they beat Philadelphia, Boston, and Detroit. Now, Philadelphia, well below 500, not making the playoffs. Detroit, same. Boston, they always beat Boston. Losses, they lost twice to Nashville, twice to St. Louis, which is surprising. I think a big part of the reason why people are talking about the resurrection of St. Louis is the fact that Washington didn't beat them in either of their meetings. Chicago, Dallas in overtime, Columbus in overtime, and then the only loss they've suffered against an Eastern foe in regulation is against the New York Islanders, which was a game that was scoreless 5 minutes into the third. So it was a close, tight-checking game. Now, when you look at the shots, and again, you'll see something shoehorned in here, this is what shows that the puck control has not been in Washington's favor for a lot of this, which makes sense when you look at the scores, right? They were outshot by Nashville 34-25. They were outshot by St. Louis 42-25. They outshot Dallas 37-29, as I said. Hudobin stole that one. Then they went into Detroit. They outshot the Red Wings 34-25. They got outshot by Philadelphia 40-25. And they got outshot by Boston 41-22. So winning will hide the fact that you're not really controlling the game and there might be some good fortunes getting in there. They outshot Columbus 33-22. Got outshot by St. Louis 37-29. So not only did they allow 9 goals against St. Louis, but in those 2 games, they allowed 79 shots. That's just not good enough against a team that they should be able to beat, right? They then actually almost had the same amount of shots as Nashville in that game. They lost 7-2. Final shots, 29 for Nashville, 28 for Washington. They got outshot by the Islanders 25-19 in that 2-0 game. And then today they actually outshot Chicago 39-28. I haven't done the review on that, obviously. I'm going to do all the reviews later. I'm going to try to do some other fun stuff in between now and then. But yeah, this is something, and those next 10 games are huge. Now, trying to figure out, okay, well, who are you going to put the blame on? That's where it gets difficult because people get defensive about their players. As I've discovered in videos I've done recently, where I discuss players who are struggling, fans get really defensive. You can't talk about my player because my player's really good. He's just maybe in a little bit of a slump, and that's really kind of all I'm arguing. Now, over this 11 games, Ovechkin has 4 goals and 3 assists. He's a -4, and he's got 1 power play goal. No power play assists. Backstrom's even more telling. He has 2 goals and 2 assists in 10 games. He missed 1 game. He's a -5 over those 10 games. He has 1 power play goal. The fact that Nicklas Backstrom doesn't have a power play assist in his last 10 games, very telling about the special teams part of things, which, when you look at it overall, Washington's been losing the special teams battle as well during these last 11 games. Wilson, 2 goals and 1 assist in his last 11 games played. He has no points in his last 5. And rough games overall. Now, Wilson is not an offensive dynamo, and he's never going to be. But I think that, when he came back after the suspension and he was scoring at about a goal a game and they were winning all those games, it was like, yes, all Washington needed to get out of that funk they'd been in while he was suspended was him. Wilson's the guy. Well, when Wilson isn't the guy, they don't seem to be able to win either. But that seems to be overly simplifying it. You look at the numbers. Copley's numbers have been kind of pedestrian in goal. Holtby's have been solid. Holtby, up until today, they've been solid. Today's numbers are going to drop him. He'd actually been solid over any starts he had over this lull, this 11 games, minus the 2 at the start and today. So those numbers are going to drag everything else down. But other than that, he really hasn't been the problem. Kuznetsov, 1 goal, 4 assists in his last 11 games played. He's a -4. That 1 goal was in the 2-1 loss to Columbus. Now, after he scored the goal, he did the whole bird dance thing. I think he should drop it. And I don't say that because I'm anti whatever it does, but when you get 1 goal in 11 games and your celebration ticks the other team off so that when they score in overtime, they do the dance right back at you, shows that Columbus didn't forget he did it. And in the end, odds are the guys were like, can you see this guy out there being an ass. I can't wait to beat him. This is going to be great. So while Kuznetsov had a fantastic playoff and it worked in his favor, again, when you're hot dogging it and you're kind of rubbing it in your opponent's faces, which is how that can look, it can backfire in hockey. Absolutely. We all want to see more color in the game, more celebrations. We want to see guys being themselves. That's what I mean by more color, not this black and white milk toast kind of thing that they're just, giving you all the pat answers. You want guys to come out and show their personality and have fun and celebrate, but at the same time, when that celebration kind of seems like I'm thinking of the Austin Matthews putting his hand to his ear thing and how that didn't work out so well either in Chicago. Yeah, you got to watch that. And for Kuznetsov, he's down on the third line. He was a -3 today. He's a -4 over the last 11 games. And, that one goal. And I've talked about this before. Kuznetsov, talked about this years ago, actually. Kuznetsov has a decent shot. He's a good player. And better than good when he's really on. And I'm surprised at how often that shot doesn't necessarily get utilized. So when you look at their next 10, it's not going to be easy. The only team in their division that's fighting with them for a playoff spot they have a shot at in the next 10 is Columbus on February 12th. So they're not going to be able to directly influence Pittsburgh, the Islanders, and Columbus only in about a month's time. So it's going to be a tough slog for them. And the fact that they've got San Jose twice, they do own Boston. So at home against Boston, I'll give them that one. Calgary's been playing really well. Toronto, they've got to start showing some fire and getting back up to where they were early in the year, because Toronto is really better than what they've been lately. But it's not going to be easy. And then when you look at the gimme games, you could qualify Colorado as, they're going to win that. But Colorado started waking up, and they can score. And teams that can score seem to feast on Washington right now. Florida and LA both look like doormats. Don't let that fool you. I've watched Florida win a couple of games this week and look pretty solid. I've watched LA win a couple in recent weeks too. And they can look bad on any given night, but Washington has kind of been making bad teams look good over the last few weeks. So we'll see where this ends up. I do not anticipate Washington falling into the playoffs. I don't anticipate them not turning it around. But it is interesting to look at this slump while it's occurring. And let me know what you guys think they have to do to fix it. Because what I kept hearing during the broadcast today was the coach. That what's going on with Washington, they're getting beat. They've been beaten with 4 or more goals scored against them a lot lately. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Today's 5. So 5 out of those 8 losses have been where the opponent scores 4 or more goals. That's just not going to work. I showed yesterday in the Islanders video that I did that cutting down on goals against greatly increases your chances of winning. It's so simple, but it works. We'll see what turns things around. And at what point does the general manager look down and say, I think maybe we should look at the coach? Because you're not going to trade Ovechkin, Backstrom, Wilson, Kuznetsov. You're not trading any of these guys. So other than maybe making some support decisions, maybe bringing in some more depth guys, moving things around like the Ducks did, that kind of thing. But really, you get the feeling that over the next 10 games, this is something that could either get uglier or, even if they go 5-5 in their next 10, the way that other teams in their division are playing, they will be falling behind. Let me know what you guys think, though, in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, just tap it upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.